So our moderator for the session on leveraging global partnership is Dr. Chidima Esime. Sorry if I didn't mention your name well. And she is a research programs manager at Bowie State University and strategy development fellow at UNCF's Institute of Capacity Building. Dr. Chidima seamlessly blend academic rigor with strategic foresight with a background in bioengineering and mechanical engineering. She's also a passionate advocate for building sustainable learning communities and is dedicated to mentoring the next generation of researchers and scientists. Her commitment to excellence and her ability to navigate the intricate landscape of academia and partnership enables her to approach both with excitement and great attitude. When not immersed in research and strategy, Dr. Esime enjoys traveling, supporting early-stage entrepreneurs, reflecting her belief in a well-rounded approach, balanced approach to life and work. I think that she is the best person to lead us in discussing this topic with her panel. And so over to you, Dr. Chidima, and your panelists for the session. We are waiting to hear from you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Miss Irene Adai, for that wonderful introduction to this panel. We're so excited to be here on behalf of UNCF and organizations that are going to be represented in this panel. We bring you greetings from all over the world. The US is represented, Ghana is represented, and many, many more countries. We're just going to go ahead and set the stage and the background for this conversation, and then I will introduce the esteemed panelists, just so we have a sense of who is in the room. You may have done this for the just concluded session. Can you please put your name in the chat, what university you're calling in from? We know Nigeria is here, Ghana is obviously here, and we heard from some of the other institutions at the last session, which was amazing. So just by way of introduction, so we can greet you, say hello, we just want to know who is here with us and what you're most excited about learning today. That would be awesome. That would be great. I see lots of institutions that are represented. And so in terms of the context and what we are here to discuss today, we're really here to talk about leveraging global partnerships for accelerating the future of learning in Africa. And, I have the privilege of working with UNCF Institute for Capacity Building, and we are going to share a little bit more about our organization and how we have involved ourselves in this conversation. And here is the context for today's conversation. As we know from UNESCO and lots of other reports, even the UN and the SDG goals and Education 2030 initiative, also the AU in Africa, we know that Africa has the fastest growing population. And not only that, right, the potential of the youth to change global economies, not just for communities, but for the continent of Africa is unmatched. And so the goal for today in this conversation is how are we actually maximizing that untapped potential? How are we leveraging innovation? How are we leveraging sustainable development to really equip our youth? We spoke about AI in the last one. Honestly, the goal is to relearn, to unlearn, and to make sure that upskill our youth so that they can compete in a global economy. So that's the goal for not just AAU, but institutions of higher education in Africa and beyond. The interesting thing, though, is that higher education enrollment remains significantly low in Africa, not just because we have lots of universities, but because of the growing population and really access to finances, access to resources, the enrollment remains at a low as compared to the global average. And the scary statistic is that we're actually going to need more enrollment opportunities as those who are going to be tertiary education age will more than double by 2040. And we want to leverage global partnership. So what does the state of the world look like on the other side of the world? Let's look at the United States, for example. In the United States, there is a very interesting phenomenon happening. In fact, some would say the opposite, where you have declining birth rates and something called an enrollment cliff for higher education. All of higher education is experiencing this in the United States, where the available number of students to actually enroll in colleges is declining at an alarming rate, coupled with the fact that there's some hesitancy and there's a lot of conversation about the value of higher education in the United States. People are reconsidering even going to college. And so, on the one hand, you have this explosion, population growth, exciting youth growth opportunity, the opportunity for social mobility in Africa. And in the United States, you have the opposite happening with declining birth rates and enrollment cliff. The goal is there a framework and is there a way that we can leverage our innovative potential to actually move the conversation forward, to accelerate the future of learning in Africa? Because Africa is next. Africa is the top of the conversation in every single sector of the global conversation right now. And we want to introduce you to HBCUs, which are historically Black colleges and universities, which have this very, very interesting history and interesting conversation that's happening on a national level in the United States. Here's what's unique about HBCUs. They outperform national averages actually by double in enabling students to socially enhance their outcomes. So social mobility is unmatched. Also mental health and several other outcomes, HBCU graduates are outperforming their counterparts. Access to education also for HBCUs is also at a historic high in the sense that usually they're of great value and outmatched educational potential. And so, what we want to discuss today through several partnerships and several practices that we want to highlight are that HBCUs can really offer a way to accelerate of learning in Africa. And here at UNCF, we're doing this by going on a year of discovery. We are participating and intentionally devoting ourselves to a year of discovery, where we're going to be talking about building capacity of HBCUs and to develop transformational strategies and partnerships to alleviate the enrollment question for African students and to support the future of learning in Africa. And so you see here on the screen, by building capacity, we're talking about developing institutional talent, systems, policies, initiatives, and partnerships, right? And we are interested in those that are sustainable and can scale for the next decades. And by transformational, we mean really to change the way that we do business, right? Change the way that we're thinking about education so that we can meet workforce needs, we can meet societal needs. I loved the questions that came out of the last session. Those are the things that we're very much trying to address. Sustainability, making sure that all of these endeavors are resourced appropriately and to make sure that they can sustain, and then scale so that we can do more. We can do more and we can run faster and leap higher. And so we have 4 strategic pillars. I won't read all the questions in the interest of time, but we are really looking at cross-Atlantic student enrollment and financing. How do we make sure that we can scale for students to come to the United States to study, do what they need to do? If they wish to go back and change their communities, do so. If they wish to get scholarship and funding, how do we do that? How do we promote academic exchange and mutual success so that this is a beneficial partnership? We're talking about academic innovation as well. Faculty exchanges, we're going to discuss that here. Leadership development, research centers, making sure that we can elevate and amplify the beautiful work happening across the African continent in several research centers and across all the institutions. How can we partner with HBCUs and with institutions in the United States to amplify that work and to collaborate? Thirdly, we're thinking about institutional capacity and business model development. How are we collaborating more efficiently, more powerfully, more sustainably? And how do we scale? We want colleges to develop and generate revenue, both here in the States and in Africa. And we believe that partnerships between HBCUs and African higher education institutions can really support that effort. And last but not least, empowerment and global leadership. There are big problems in the world that we can solve together. And so we want to measure and institutionalize the best practices, the promising practices, and make sure that we're really amplifying those strategic assets that we can transform together. And last but not least, how do we impact governance, innovation, right? And change the narrative about Africa, change the narrative about stories that are coming out of the African continent and celebrate the amazing work that's happening. And so we have an amazing, amazing, amazing set of people who are here today. And we're really honored to be able to discuss with you today, rub minds together, and be able to learn together. And so we have Dr. Cicely McDaniel, who is a strategist on the strategy development team at UNCF's Institute for Capacity Building. She has several decades in higher education, and she will be giving a history on HBCUs, UNCF, and the work that we do. In our midst, we have one of the transformational leaders and really the top academic officer of his institution, Vice Chancellor Professor Isaac Abeku-Blankson, who is the VC, the Vice Chancellor for the African University of Communications and Business. Amazing work in actually driving those partnerships between HBCUs and African higher education institutions. And he'll be sharing the framework of how they're doing that. And joining him will be Dr. Beverly Booker Ama, the Executive Director of the HBCU African Education Coalition. They have held several conferences, both in Africa, in Ghana, in several nations, and in the United States, to get students, faculty, and partners to really reinvest in Africa and vice versa. And certainly, last but not least, she really needs no introduction. If you've been watching CNN and several other news media, really addressing the barrier of financial access for students and those who want to go from African higher education institutions or from Africa to United States and all over the world is Dr. Lydia Bosire, who is the founder and CEO of 8B Education Investments. We've curated a panel today, and we're very, very excited for you to hear all that they are doing. And so first, I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Cicely McDaniel, who's going to do a deep dive into HBCUs, UNCF, and their historical impact. Dr. McDaniel, please, the floor is yours.
Sorry about that, a little technical difficulty. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, perfect. Good morning, distinguished colleagues, leaders, and friends. I'm Dr. Cicely Barker McDaniel, strategist with UNCF's Institute for Capacity Building, and it's a true honor to join you here today. Our theme, the future of learning in Africa, technology, innovation, skills, and inclusive growth, is one that really resonates with the legacy of historically Black colleges and universities in the United States. But before I get into that, I want to just take a small moment to recognize the deeper significance of today's gathering. As a historian of African American women's history, I'm generally reminded that the bond between Africa and the institutions we call HBCUs is not a new one. It's actually a continuation of a centuries-long exchange of knowledge, resilience, and purpose. In the aftermath of American emancipation, HBCUs became sanctuaries of possibility, built by and for people determined to transform into opportunity, freedom into opportunity. Those same values of education, self-determination, and global citizenship echo across the African continent even now. But today it's a reminder. It's a reminder that expanding those pathways between HBCUs and Africa is in many ways a reconnection of both those shared legacies, and it's a bridge. Think of a bridge linking historic mission to modern opportunity. Okay, so that spirit of self-determination, of communities coming together to educate, empower, and sustain themselves didn't end with emancipation. It's the same spirit that inspired Dr. Frederick Patterson of Tuskegee Institute in 1944 to unite Black colleges under one banner, and that was the United Negro College Fund. Dr. Patterson proposed that Black colleges band together to raise funds for their mutual survival and progress. And that cooperative spirit that we see, rooted in self-help, shared prosperity, it still defines us today. Our dual goal is simple but profound. We must invest directly in students, and we must strengthen the institutions that serve them. Now, does that mean scholarships? Absolutely. But it also means faculty development. It means digital learning, data capacity, and leadership training. We have 37 member HBCUs in 19 states. UNCF mobilizes resources, partnerships, and policy advocacy so that students not only enroll, they graduate, and they thrive. So at the heart of our work is colleges and the universities themselves. In 2006, UNCF partnered with HBCUs to help them strengthen their capacity and accelerate transformation. Through our Institute of Capacity Building, or ICB as we call it, we focus on three areas, and that's membership engagement, professional learning and faculty development, and institutional research and evaluation. All of these are designed in a way to help campuses build long-term resilience. Our effort gained some momentum in 2016 with ever large investments and fundraising. We became known as intermediaries for scale because they were recognizing our ability to help institutions implement lasting systemic change. So beyond the federal government, UNCF is the largest private provider of college scholarships in the United States. We support nearly 10,000 students each year with more than $100 million in funding. Over the decades, we've helped more than 430,000 students not only attend college, but graduate, lead, and thrive in every field imaginable. And actually, I was one of those students. I was a UNCF scholar at Xavier University eons ago. Our work begins even earlier, however. We partner with schools and nonprofits to prepare high school students for success before, after, and during college. And that's what it means to be at the heart of UNCF. One of our graduates said, it was an HBCU that took a chance on me. It was an HBCU that gave me courage. And that single sentence really captures what data alone cannot. At our very best, HBCUs transform uncertainty into confidence and potential into leadership. That same spirit of belief and investment is what really binds our work to the aspirations of African universities. So we are reminded that HBCUs are not just institutions, but they are living movements. To understand the power that we have today, to understand the power today, we have to look at where they began. And we have to look at this as a journey of exclusion to excellence that reshaped higher education in America and inspired the world. This timeline traces that journey. I'm not going to go over everything, but I'll give you some highlights here. In 1636, essentially when America was being colonized, Harvard was founded, Harvard University. From that point, and for 200 years thereafter, Black people were excluded from higher education for more than 2 centuries. But in 1837, we have our first Black institution, Cheyney University. It was established demonstrating that education itself could be a form of liberation. After emancipation, we'll see the Freedmen's Bureau and missionary societies helping to build dozens of colleges in the South, all planting the seeds of what we now call HBCUs. There was the Morrill Land Grant Act, 1862 and 1890, which expanded access even further, creating public colleges in agriculture, science, and mechanical arts. Now, by the mid-20th century, leaders such as Dr. Patterson and the great Mary McLeod Bethune founded the United Negro College Fund in the midst of all that was happening within the Black community. They gave birth to a new era of collaboration, and they also gave us the unforgettable message, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. Through every era, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, civil rights, and beyond, HBCUs have remained at the center, the heartbeat of progress, shaping teachers, scientists, ministers, and movement leaders. So this legacy is not just American history. It's a global lesson of what really happens when education meets purpose. President Barack Obama once captured the spirit of HBCUs perfectly when he called them crucibles of learning, catalysts of change, and cradles of opportunity. For more than a century and a half, institutions have not only educated our students, they've shaped character, they've cultivated leadership, and they've kept the dream of progress alive for every generation that follows. But even with this extraordinary impact, HBCUs continue to confront deep structural inequities, those inequities that I'm sure all of us on this webinar all understand. Challenges tied to limited funding, historic underinvestment, systems not built for our success. Now, these barriers absolutely affect learners. They affect the institutions and the systems around them. And yet, and I say it again, and yet, despite these disparities, we continue to educate and uplift against the odds. Now, despite our limited resources, the impact of HBCUs is extraordinary. Though they represent just 3% of all colleges in the United States, we enroll 10% of all Black students and award 15% of all bachelor's degrees and 19% of all STEM degrees earned by Black graduates. Most HBCUs rank in the top 10% nationwide for advancing economic mobility. And that proves to us that impact is not always measured by wealth, but it's measured by outcomes. Although HBCU students make up just 10% of all Black college students, they produce 80% of our Black judges, doctors, and half of all Black lawyers, professors, and public school teachers. Their outcomes just don't match better resourced peers. They actually surpass them, and that's the power of a mission-driven education. HBCU graduates earn 56% more than they would without a degree, nearly $1 million in an added lifetime income. That's not just economic mobility. That is generational transformation that we're seeing. HBCUs generate over $14.8 billion in economic impact and more than 134,000 jobs nationwide. For every dollar spent by an HBCU or its students, $1.44 flows back into local communities, showing us real measurable impact. The HBCU story is proof that education can transform economies, families, and nations. So the question before us now is, how do we build that same transformative power across the continent? These 37 member institutions represent the heart of Black higher education in America. Each one, whether a small college or a nationally recognized university, shares a singular mission, and that's to educate, uplift, and lead with purpose. Together, they form the foundation of UNCF's enduring legacy. So, what's at stake for us here? This story reminds us that what's possible when education and purpose align, something we can reimagine together across continents. If not for HBCUs, separate but equal would still be the law of the land. If not for HBCUs, the civil rights movement might not have gone as far. If not for HBCUs, one small step might have been too big of a leap. If not for HBCUs, Head Start might not have been a non-starter, or might have been a non-starter. If not for HBCUs, there would be no rising Black middle class. Within a decade of graduating, HBCU alumni earn over $71,000 a year and $1 million more over their lifetime. This is transforming families, building wealth, and reshaping communities for generations to come. Imagine what Black universities and colleges could achieve if unfair and unjust impediments to their success were strategically and irrevocably removed. That's what UNCF is designed to do, because when HBCUs rise, generations rise with them. Thank you for allowing me this time to share a little bit about our historically Black colleges and universities.
Thank you so much, Dr. McDaniel, for that wonderful deep dive into HBCUs, as well as their historic impact and potential to transform communities and the nation. So hopefully for our guests and audience in the room, you have a greater appreciation for the HBCU framework, the HBCU mission, and truly there is a natural affinity and a natural shared history. We all know of several leaders, of the African continent who schooled at HBCUs. What if we could have the next several presidents, the next several tech innovators, the next several world changers coming from the African continent going to HBCUs? They're naturally created as a haven for Black students and for all students, really. With the data and all of the things that Dr. McDaniel shared, you see the evidence that the success story of graduates from HBCUs are unmatched. And so to really talk about partnerships with HBCUs and a case study of an excellent university on the African continent who is really leading that change and that conversation, we want to introduce our next set of panelists. We're quite excited to have Vice Chancellor Professor Isaac Abigu-Blankson from the African University of Communications and Business, as well as Dr. Beverly Booker Amah, Executive Director of HBCU African Education Coalition. Dr. Booker Amah and Vice Chancellor, you're welcome. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me. Can you please hear me?
Yes.
Great, great, great. So I want to thank, first of all,
Yes,
thank
we can.
thank the AUU for this opportunity. Also, Dr. Chidima, you have set up a very good series of questions for us to think about relating to the issue of how do we leverage global partnerships to enhance education. So that is good. And I also like the fact that Dr. Cicely McDaniel, you've positioned this very well for us within the HBCU community of universities. Now, we here at AUCB, African University of Communication and a few years ago, we realized that we have a very serious disconnect between not only what we teach and the society in generally as universities, but also we are not connected to our brothers and sisters within the HBCU community. So we got into partnership with Higher Education Coalition, the HBCU Higher Education, through which Dr. Beverly Bukama will talk a little bit about. And as a result of that partnership, we have done amazing things and continue to do amazing stuff. But we can't do it alone. We want to repeat all HBCUs if we can. Every HBCU should be part of this partnership. And I'm going to tell you why. First, we all know what is happening now in our global society. The need for us to connect together, to research together, to exchange ideas together, to exchange knowledge together is very, 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 very apparent and very, very grave. You see around us now, not only in the United States, but globally, there are serious challenges which has to bring us to to the table to discuss how can we form strong, mutually beneficial partnerships to promote our common objectives as universities. And so I'm very, very excited with our partnership with Hayek. Now, a few years ago, we also changed our student capstone experiences and pretty much most of our curricula here to make it more practical, impactful research applied, where students actually don't need to write, they are not required to write the normal theses and dissertations that we see other universities do, but go into the real world, identify a challenge, a problem, or whatever it is, opportunity, society, industry, and then together as a team, brainstorm ideas as how to fix those challenges or problems within our continent. Because as a continent, you all know we have a lot of issues that we ourselves can solve but are not, and so much dependent on international. So our students here at AUCB don't write theses as traditional theses as we know it, but they have to solve our problems as a nation, as a society, as a communities and industry. So then the second part is the research exposure. So now we also realize that we have to connect to our HBCU brothers and sisters there to now engage, exchange students, exchange faculty, collaborate on research opportunities and things like, and also, intensify our recruitment and here and there. So our partnership with the Hayek is key in this. We have accomplished a lot. Would want to get all of you involved. One of the things that we are now promoting or have established is the Pan-African Research Coalition Institute. It is located here at AUCB, and the idea is to form this collaborative partnership where HBCUs and African-based universities can collaborate to do research and share their knowledge, but mostly more of an applied research so we can address our common problems. And so it is. We also have a partnership with Houston-Tillerson University in terms of exchanging of students and also developing programs that our students can teach and their students can also take. So we are exploring different models, 2x2 or 2+2 kind of models, 3+1 models, and things like that. But the key here that I want every HBCU representative on this panel and those who are not able to just send a message to know is that it is time for us to get together to form our partnerships through the Hayek organization so that we can sit around the common table or desk or through different channels to exchange ideas, to collaborate on our research partnership, to exchange students, and to build strong relationships that would help us address our common challenges and issues. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Dr. Beverly Bukaama, to continue from here. But again, my call to you is for if you are an HBCU, you cannot do this alone, and we cannot do it alone. We need all of us together to form this coalition and this partnership so that we can make meaningful impact in our societies and in the global society generally. So that is my call to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Blanks. And you said everything in such an amazing way. I will just, like you said, make a few comments. Part of the HBCU Africa Education Coalition, our mission is called the 100,000 Strong Africa Initiative. And like Professor Blankson said, the goal is equity and access. So while a lofty goal, over the next 20 years, the collective goal is to have 50,000 students from the continent engage with HBCUs and have 50,000 students from HBCUs travel to the continent as the next emerging Pan-African scholars. one thing that we realized, Professor Blankson is also the co-chair of the HBCU Africa Education Coalition. The other co-chair is Provost Vanderpoy. And so together they represent the epitome of the idea that we have to collaborate. As Vice Chancellor said, we need each other. We cannot just do this in isolation. And so it's very important that we build in coalition. One of the things that we say with Hayek, AUCB, and now Park I is that we are complementary with each other, not competition. So as we come together, we can all find ways that we all win for the common good. And so one of the things with the center of AUCB that we've been doing is bringing students to Ghana to do scholarship together with students that are already in Ghana, looking from a Pan-African minded framework to solve our issues. And one of the things that Hayek is also doing with the leadership of AUCB, with the co-chairs, Vice Chancellor Blankson and Provost Vanderpoy, is also having students both from the continent and from HBCUs travel together, not only to Ghana, but to other places like South Africa, Tanzania, Morocco, and more, with the idea that we want them to become researchers, active researchers in many places. And so it gives the opportunity for not just Ghana and HBCUs to collaborate, but it gives the open invitation for all universities that are African universities and HBCUs to come together, as Vice Chancellor Blankson said. I would just say again, in closing of our portion, we really want all African universities on this call, all HBCUs, to think about coming to Ghana, with AUCB and Park I hosting June 3rd through the 9th to talk about in person how we all can connect in tangible ways and build together, with Unite, and UNCF. So thank you so much, Dr. Chichi. And so I think, Vice Chancellor Blankson, if you don't have anything else, we would give it back to Chichi.
Quickly, let me add that here at AUCB, we have developed a series of courses that may be beneficial to students of the HBCU, the universities there. So, we are ready, willing to do whatever we can to partner with you to make sure that we give the best experiences to our faculty, and more especially to our students. That's the key. And Beverly talked about that. So that these are the next generation of scholars, researchers, academics, applied people. And so we need to equip them well, but we have to also equip them smartly within the Pan-African framework, because we are losing that identity as Africans. And so we need to be sure that we educate and provide opportunities for the younger ones to, first of all, think African and think, and I'm just going to end. I think it is Peter Tosh, this Jamaican artist who has passed away, who said that wherever you are, depending on where you are, it doesn't matter so long as you have a black skin. So you are still an African. But we can't lose being African. So we have to do something about it. And that is why we are calling all HBCUs to come together, both within and then also intra-university, intra-Africa universities to also come together so we can form this wonderful coalition and then move on from there. So thank you very much for the platform.
Thank you so much, Vice Chancellor Blankson, as well as Dr. Booker Amam. We appreciate that exceptional just words of wisdom and also practical example of how this can actually work. And so you heard it here first. June, if you have any proximity to Ghana within 10 hours by flight, please try to make your way to Ghana for the Park Eye Summit, and we thank both for the continued work in this space. You know, one of the things they talked about is faculty exchange, getting students to enroll both from African institutions to HBCUs and vice versa, actually, from HBCUs to African higher education institutions. And really, let's address the elephant in the room, the big picture, the big question, which is about financing. How is it actually going to work? Even here in the United States, a lot of students are having issues with completing their educational degrees because of financing. So this is not a unique problem. It's a global issue. And that is why we are so excited to have with us today really an innovator in that space. We have Dr. Lydia Bosire. Actually, right now she's in Kenya, but she travels where the work takes her, which is everywhere and anywhere. I've seen this phenomenal woman really be boots on the ground and speak to national leaders, presidents, speak to partners and investors, and then also have the sense of camaraderie and really a sense of a mother to build a community for students who are really struggling to make their dreams a reality. And so, without further ado, I am so excited to have Dr. Lydia Bosire talk about innovation in financing and how that can accelerate the future of learning in Africa. Dr. Lydia Bosire, you are welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Esimai. Do you hear me well?
Yes, please.
Excellent. I was going to start with an apology for an audio glitch. I was planning on taking the call outside, and in a Nairobi afternoon, the rain descended or threatened to descend enough that I had to decamp to another location. So apologies for any audio challenges. Dr. Esimai, I'd be so grateful if you start the presentation. I, as Dr. Esimai has introduced, I'm Lydia Kemunto Bosire. I'm the CEO and founder of 8B Education Investments. And this is an innovation really that was driven by my own experience of moving from one occasion or for one degree, receiving scholarship funding for education abroad. And then when moving on to another degree, finding that that funding was very much like winning a lottery and wanting to solve that problem in a sustainable way. But let's take a step back on what is the problem that we are seeking to solve as higher ed are adjacent to those higher education institutions. Dr. Esimai, please let me know if you still hear me okay. So I will proceed. The problem that we are solving is one that Dr. Esimai's presentation and others have already highlighted. And if we go to the first slide, that is the demographic advantage that Africa has. And the numbers are well known to all of us. But what it means is that we have the world looking to us in the next 5, 10, 15 years for the talent that will drive innovation and productivity across the global north, in addition to within our own borders. So our task for educating is simultaneously for meeting the demand for education within our borders and within our continent, but it's also keeping an eye open to where the world is going and what our demographic advantage looks like. To the next slide. The opportunity that we have is variously constrained, right? We have this really massive agenda 2063 of increasing the gross enrollment rate across the African continent. And those numbers are unlikely to be adequately met by capacity within our institutions. One of the data pieces of data that I like looking at that really drives why we think about opening up global classrooms for African students. And really that's what this conversation is about. We want to educate on the continent, but you can shorten the information for your students, knowing how they make sure the next opportunity for them can be a global opportunity, because ultimately we want to make sure that those young people that are coming out of our institutions are living their highest, best potential. And when our economies and our education systems are constrained and we have the ability to open up the world for them, it really is our job to do so. So when you look at a piece of data like that one on the right-hand side of the number of universities per million inhabitants, and we know that the numbers of our young people are growing significantly faster than we are able to build universities, we really feel the urgency of thinking about African university education with a global lens. On to the next slide. The other driver for why we must think about what we do globally is this employment gap that we know to exist within our economies. And sometimes as universities, we might think of it as not our job. We are training the young people and other people are going to catch the job problem. But actually, we do have an opportunity of thinking, connecting our education with the job market. This is an atlas that's called the Africa Youth Employment Clock that was developed in partnership with MasterCard and other entities. And what they are showing is what makes our mission collectively so urgent. So you do have this, 540 million young people on the continent. This clock is ticking by the second. If you look at it, you will be mesmerized. On the website, I encourage you to play around with it, and they have data from every African country. You have the young people numbers, and then you have the proportion of those that are employed, right? And that number is 58%. But what is really stunning is when you break down what that employment looks like. I took the data from Kenya, and that's what I show on the left. Out of a working age population of about 20 million, there is 12 million who are in actual employment. And when you break down what that looks like, it's really 5 million who are doing okay. The moderately poor are struggling, and the extremely poor are obviously struggling immensely. And the formal jobs are but a fraction of the employment rate. So even when the number in employment seems promising, 62% in the case of Kenya, when you start breaking it down, you realize maybe it's 25% where the data makes sense to say they are employed and comfortable and potentially living out their highest, best potential. And for the rest of the young people, there is a very, very big gap. So that gap is a push for the thinking about higher education on the continent with a global lens. And then the last thing that I will say is what Dr. Esimai mentioned as well, which is on the next slide, which is around what the decline in university enrollment in the US looks like and the knock-on effect on that on higher education. The result of it, if you go to the next slide, Dr. Esimai, is that there is a really big question being asked within higher education in the US, which is Africa the next place where you will be, where students will be moving from in order to go into global institutions? And I want to pause here and say, we have to think about our solution set in an, this end, right? It's not an either or, it's a both and kind of solutions that we have to explore. We have more than enough young people to fill our university classrooms, fill the future university classrooms that we have not yet built, and still have significant numbers going into global universities. And so our task as higher education institutions that are can remove the information asymmetry, right? Our students might not have as much information as we do. How do we make sure that part of our mission is telling them all that's possible here and then elsewhere as well? And then for the next slide, Dr. Esimai, one of the things that I have found to be true of talent coming from the African continent is that people ask, well, how good is the education? I went to school in Kenya, and I tell them, really quite good. And I had the fortune of getting a scholarship to Cornell University, where I was quite surprised by how far ahead of my classmates I was, having done the regular Kenya education system before that, and found myself very prepared. But the publicity isn't there about how good our institutions are. And there is this big ambition, whether we can have our own IITs. So for those of you who are familiar with this, and I'm sure most of you are, IITs are the India Institute of Technology, which are really well known to be the initial home of all the tech titans that are running global, basically building the future of global technology. Many of them had their first degrees in India at one of those India Institutes of Technology. And we do have universities that are doing phenomenal work on the continent. But some of what happens is that because there is this bottleneck, you have incredibly smart students going into very, very rigorous universities, but then only a handful will be able to get a scholarship to go into global spaces and into global innovation ecosystems. The hard work of our universities is not recognized, it's not seen, it's not visible. Our reputation is not known, while in fact some scale can start to build that reputation. And so that is one of the things that I find to be so such a passion. Can we take the work that is already being done and have it be visible? And the evidence of that is going to be in the quality of our students. And when I'm in Nairobi and in Kampala and in Accra, one of the things that I like to do, and across the cities in these countries, is talking to universities that are looking to build the kind of partnerships that Dr. Blankson, Professor Blankson was talking about, the 2+2, 3+1s, 4+1s, because it is leveraging the education they have had here and then enabling there to be a more seamless movement to a global education. And then obviously there is that gap in financing, which we meet, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But it is that push to make sure that our work continues to be seen so that we can get support from the variety of stakeholders that could be supporting our work when they know that there is excellence in our universities as there is in other regions of the world. And so that is what I'm really excited about. And so what is the impact of all of this? Back to the IIT. So how are we doing this? What we're doing as 8B, and 8B is really social impact financial technology platform whose mission is to enable African brilliance to have a global impact. And how we do that, one of the ways we do that is through financing. And practically what that means is that we work with banks and other financial institutions that ordinarily do not have products that are affordable for students, to enable them to provide such products that are affordable for students who are going to global universities. So if any of you are on the African continent and have seen either yourselves or your families try to study abroad, you end up taking an unsecured loan if you're able to. Otherwise, you wait for a scholarship, or you keep, reapplying for the next 10 years until your lucky straw is drawn. But what we're doing is basically saying luck is not a good basis upon which to build the human capital of the continent and, frankly, of the world. And so we need to use the existing technologies and products in the market to enable financing for African students to be feasible. So that's what we do on the financing side. But on the upstream side, a bit like the work of Dr. Blankson and others, we are very much intermediating between African universities that are interested in connecting with HBCUs in particular, but broader global universities in general, in order to make sure that we know, for their computer science course, what does the course catalog actually look like? Can we connect this with the course catalog of University X in the US, and make sure that we are able to course articulate in a way that students can take advantage of moving from one place to another. So that's upstream. And then downstream is really making sure there is mentoring and community, and making sure that the students who get into these universities and get financed can succeed and thrive. So then to the next slide, Dr. Esimai, the impact of all of this is short, medium, and long term. So in the short term is making sure that STEM students, and I really say short term because STEM is the driver of the moment, and because of the way in which financing works, you think about risk of lending, and you think about the opportunity of getting a job, and what the global labor market looks like. And so STEM becomes the initial area of focus. But our ambition is a lot broader than that, particularly as we move to geographies beyond the US and into European and other OECD countries within Asia. So expanding African enrollment is a key impact that we hope to see. Really, I see it as right sizing, right? We need to be punching at our demographic weight, and right now we do not. And so the kinds of innovations that 8B is involved in are a vehicle towards right sizing how Africa shows up in those spaces. And then in the medium term is making sure that there aren't just big numbers, but we're also participating in the innovation ecosystem. The subcontinent rather of India shows up in tech and other areas where the future is being built. And then obviously in the long run is making sure that the global African diaspora is the face of leadership for the world, because demographically we will be. But it's not enough to say we have the youth numbers if those young people aren't adequately equipped and getting the best education from our African universities, connecting to global innovation ecosystems. We may not be able to turn that potential into a real and expect that the kind of bridge that we do is going to enable that to happen. I want to go to the next slide, which is also about impact. And here is something I found really, by the next slide. When you think about African students who've gone to global universities, we can think of, the potential future work is everybody's weapons home. And this what tell me is that as we absolutely build our centers of influence, because when people are raising significant funding in order to be able to employ 100, 200 people, they must be trusted by the people who are giving them that money. Otherwise, we are sending our young people into entrepreneurship, which in Kenya we call Jua Kali, and you have one person or two. That does not move the needle. The needle when you have so much more capital, realize job creation comes from that. So and global access to network, I found to be really, and we may So the next slide, I'm not sure we'll be able to get there, but the next slide is really showing at a high level the work that our work at 8B. We support students in 50 out of the 54 countries. We find that they have some scholarship support from the universities they're going to, but not all, 90% are graduate students, which is why I'm encouraged by the number of universities here. My call to action is, if any of what we are doing is interesting to you, please reach out to us and let's figure out how we get your students to benefit from our end-to-end support, and it's all entirely free for them. We have webinars where on 3 times a week, actually, African students are on webinars to get free information on, how to apply, where to apply, what is a good essay, all of the things that typically they would have to go to an agent to do. And sometimes that might be a costly affair, or in fact, they might not be supported unless the agent knows that they are able to afford that education that they seek. So we're able to bridge that gap upstream by providing that support. And then to the next and final slide, what we are doing is really very much within the broader development agenda. And we think that higher education in itself is incredibly valuable in advancing a wide range of these sustainable development goals. And global tertiary education, particularly when our young people are able to access innovation ecosystems that are well-resourced, where they're not struggling for their publications and to get research funding and so on. These are things that are really opening for our economies and drive us towards shared prosperity. So my hope is that when we're thinking about the hard work that we're doing within our universities in the African higher education space, we also open that window for both ourselves as faculty that can connect with these global universities, but for our students as well, knowing that what we're building is talent for the world. And, your students can greatly benefit from knowing some of the work that we're doing. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity, Dr. Esimai, really looking forward to answering any questions and to liaising with anybody who would like to follow up after the call. Dr. Esimai, back to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bosire, for that wonderful, wonderful presentation. I don't want to release immediately from your presentation because I actually want to highlight a specific number. This is actually a huge success story, this slide, if you think about it. And I just want to focus on this average loan size, the total number of funds that have been dispersed by 8B Education Investments. One of the many hats that I wear is as a research programs manager at Bowie State University in Maryland in the United States. And this loan size can do significant damage to the cost of education. Bowie State, as alongside several HBCUs, are of unmatched value. This can actually go a really long way into ensuring that a student is able to complete their degree. And then they can, come seek to get additional funding, find communal support, and so on and so forth. So again, if you are joining us or listening to this at a different time, we encourage you to talk to your students, to talk to anyone you know who is seeking to attain an education globally, but especially in the United States. Once you address the question of funding, you are significantly lowering that barrier to access. So thank you, Dr. Bosire, for that excellent presentation. And now we're just going to bring up all of our panelists back up. And I want to ask if there are any questions from our global audience, from our institutions who are here. We see administrators, institutional leaders, we see faculty members are here, we see several people are here, and so the floor is open for questions. And I do want to highlight a comment that was made, and let me go to it. This is, yes, I believe this is by Professor Shongwe. And please, Professor Shongwe, if you can put the organization or institution that you are from so that we can attribute your organization appropriately. And this is the comment that was made. I hope there would be a regional and continental platform where all African universities can access other universities and organizations for easy access and collaborations. We certainly want to highlight the 58 years that AAU has been connecting African higher institutions. And we also want to highlight the UNCF Institute for Capacity Building, which is seeking to really create this community of practice for global partnerships. That is why we are honored to be here today. And that is why we were intentional about bringing Vice Chancellor Blankson, Dr. Booker Ama, and Dr. Lydia Bosire. My colleague and I, Dr. McDaniel, we are so invested in this work of making sure that these global partnerships can actually scale and sustain. And so I do want to ask the panelists, for someone who is really looking to expand, accelerate the future of learning in Africa, what is the one thing that they can do now, depending on what sector they're in, to scale and sustain, maybe initiate, maybe join, maybe amplify existing programs or initiatives? For example, what are some programs or initiatives that we should all be aware of? And what is it that they can do now to actually involve themselves in this work and be part of the global conversation? And I'll throw this to all of the panelists. Please feel free to chime in.
I think I would encourage everybody to look at a best practice or effective practice case study. So, if you are in Nigeria and you have a colleague at another institution that is doing that with the HBCU, or if you are at HBCU that is doing that with an African university, be open and collaborate, have conversations. And I really think that's the first step. A lot of times in higher ed, we don't share enough. Need to share. And I think just as one case study, a case study that we're very humbled but proud of is AUCB and Houston Tillotson University. They are at the start of that collaboration, and it's not just them. Hyatt, through Park and through AUCB's leadership, there are 25 HBCUs and African universities a part of our network. What happens is everybody gets to leverage their strengths and their assets. We don't all have to do everything by ourselves. So I think the first step, Dr. SMI, is to actually connect and make conversations and look at what colleagues may be doing and connect with that. So then that gives a path and a model for how you can do that too. And again, you don't have to do it by yourself. That is the power of Pan-African coalition building. We're better together than doing it in silos.
Thank you, Dr. Booker Ama. I'll throw it to Vice Chancellor Blankson or Dr. Bosire.
Oh, okay. So I think what Beverly said is right on point. And somebody had, one of the participants asked a question, is there a platform where we can learn from each other, where we can share and things like that? But currently, I don't know of any platform that connects us. And so it is something that I've noted. And so we're going to work on that. It's very important because like Dr. Bukama said, there are great models out there, best practices out there, both here and abroad. However, with my experience on the continent, African universities tend to look to Europe more than to ourselves, within ourselves, and to our brothers and sisters out there in the diaspora, the HBCUs. We have to now begin to think differently. We don't have to depend on Europeans or who is not connected to us in that way to do what we have to do. And so this is the essence of us partnering with HBCUs, because I think this is the time. And so if you are representing any school out there, know that there are best practices out there that you can connect with, learn from, and maybe you may also even be a best practice that we can also learn from. But we can't just sit and wait and then form partnerships with European and white schools and then just forget about our own growth and development and solving our own problems. We can do it, but we have to get together to do it. And so great.
Thank you so much, Vice Chancellor Blankson. Dr. Bosiri.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in on what Dr. Bukar Amas said on you do not have to do this alone. The way we think about success is in a new Alexandria. Think about HBCUs connecting with African universities, so there is a seamless movement of research, professors and staff, expertise, and students between the continent and HBCUs and other places where the global African diaspora have built of learning in a manner that allows us, to use an earlier term I said, to punch at our demographic weight. And so really thinking about is something that we must do. And in the United Negro College Fund, we are really keen to make the next steps, making sure that we can jumpstart some of that work. Professor Blankson, some of that tech behind the scenes work and connecting what we are doing, what Hayek is doing, what other entities are doing in this space that allows for that repository of, what are the institutions that want to connect, what are the courses on which they want to connect, what are they studying, and so on. So I think this is a really good space to be watching, and I look forward to connecting with many of you and through the convening of UNCF, making sure that we are all providing those resources that allow us to build this new Alexandria collectively. Thank you, Dr. Esimai.
Do we have another
Dr. McDaniel?
Yes. I think everything that we've all put together is absolutely on spot. I said something a little bit earlier, is that talent is universal. And so we have talent on both sides and all around. I think in this sort of intermediary space, as we begin to figure out what this looks like, we can go back to some of our basics. Conferences, Zooms, connecting via technical platforms in the meantime as we're trying to pull together funding and sources and partnerships. But some of our biggest amplifiers are our students and our faculty. Our faculty should be reaching across the waters, sharing their research, sharing their writings, joint journals, joint projects. Our students should be going back and forth. And we know that there's a funding issue, but that's something that we're all working on. All of us here on this platform, and all of us want that to happen. One of the things that UNCF has, we have our annual Unite conference in the summers. This year it is in July 2026. It's where all of our HBCUs come together and convene and talk about all of the issues in higher education. And global learning, global experiences has been a part of that and will continue to be a part of that. So hopefully we will see some traction in this coming soon.
Thank you so much to all of our panelists. We don't want to leave you without resources. We see a lot of the questions in the chat are saying, make sure, you highlight this, make sure you highlight this. How do we do this? How do we get our students to solve problems of society? I want to certainly highlight the comment by Professor Maposa. I did respond to that. Also want to highlight the comments by, let's see, several comments. We will attempt to respond to them all, but we want to just leave you with a final slide of some resources that you can anticipate. You know, we don't want to leave you without resources. And so you've heard from all of our esteemed panelists. We want to invite you now to actually be part of the global framework that we discussed. We talked about the year of learning for UNCF ICB, where we are actually coming up with a framework for how these global partnerships can scale and be sustained. And so we are going to be sending this out. AAU has graciously agreed to send this out, but this is a survey that we have developed. We have asked our US institutions to fill this out. We want all of our African higher education institutions who we're seeking to partner with to fill this out as well. And we're trying to gauge institutional readiness, any barriers to access for these global partnerships, and ways that we can be very intentional about building a very strong, sustainable foundation. So please, if you can scan the QR code. We can also send this out to you with appropriate links and everything so that you can be a part of this creation process. We also want to mention the Park I Summit that Professor Vice Chancellor Blankson has mentioned, and also Dr. Beverly Booker Ama. It is June 3 through 9, 2026. We are working on potential funding. We understand that finances might be an issue. This is something that Dr. Bosire mentioned, and so stay tuned for that. But certainly, there are videos that you can watch, very beautiful videos. This is not their first time running a conference. Hayek and the entire team have been running conferences of this caliber. And so we want to invite you to the Park I Summit in Ghana. And as my colleague mentioned, Dr. Bosire mentioned, 8B, the data speak for themselves, right? 8B has really invested millions of dollars into supporting students and their success in global education. And so you have a very high level endorsement from the former Minister of Education in Ghana. And the website is simple, 8b.africa. Connect your students, connect yourself, and see what 8B has to offer. And as Dr. McDaniel said, we are building a community of practice. Unite conferences are second to none. We invite you all to come. It is in the United States in Atlanta, Georgia, and that is the website there, uncficib.org/unite. The door is open, as we say. You are welcome. So please come connect. And finally, on behalf of all of us here at UNCF Institute for Capacity Building and the entire planning committee for this seminar and session, we want to say a huge thank you to AAU for having us. Congratulations and thank you so much. We look forward to working together in the future. Back to you, Miss Irene. Let us know if there's anything else. Thank you all.